I'm going to refuse any more cases. And then they'd have to give them to the private lawyers, and it would cost the city 2 or 3 times as much. So after they had to pay $2 or $3 million here or there, they started listening to me. But I was criticized, a lot publicly by then Gavin Newsom. We kind of went toe to toe because he was very unhappy with my not going along with the cuts that he had recommended for other departments. What I tried to explain to him is that as public defenders, we don't control the cases that come to us. If we get a life case and we have to deal with, we have to assign someone to do it. And if that person has 50 other cases, they're not going to be able to do a good job. So yeah, it is frustrating, and certainly I see in other counties and other states the struggles that they went through. Like, I just met with the public defender from Missouri, and he made national news last week because they are 230 lawyers short of what they need to be. There's a commission study saying that they need 230 lawyers more in order to statewide administer indigent defense. And so the governor cut their budget again. And so there's an obscure provision in Missouri law that allows the public defender to give the case to a private lawyer. So who did he give it to? He gave it to the governor. and so the governor now has to operate as a public defender. Well, as of 2 weeks ago, the governor hadn't seen his client, hadn't called him, so that's going to be an interesting issue. But, public defenders have had to do that sort of thing in order to, but the system, I have to say, is a mess in most places. We're very fortunate in our office. We not only have public defenders, we have investigators, we have paralegals, we have social workers. We have a full-time education attorney. So if a kid gets kicked out of school for being involved in a crime, we have lawyers that actually make sure that they're allowed to stay in school rather than just expelled or suspended, and that they're given special services if they would benefit from that, because we want to keep kids in school. So we have a lot of resources that other public defender offices do not. But it is a battle, just to sort of get the semblance of justice. And most people don't realize that. They think that, from watching Law and Order or TV, you go to court, you get a good lawyer, you get justice, and you go home. Well, the reality is very different. Part of what I see my function as a public defender is to try to convince people of, these reforms. It's very interesting. I've been working on this motion all weekend because there are no African Americans on juries in San Francisco anymore. And if you go to court out of 100 people that are on...
Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, one, the population of African Americans has shrunk from like 15% to now 5.7% because of gentrification and rising rents and everything else. So there's fewer African Americans in the city. But when it comes to jury duty, they use the voter registration rolls where there's historically a low number of African Americans registered to vote, and they use the DMV. And the DMV, there's a recent study done by the Lawyers Committee of San Francisco that shows that ethnic minorities are over-prosecuted for things like driving with a suspended license, fines and fees at 7 or 8 times the rate of white counterparts. And so what that means is not that there are more bad African-American drivers who are driving around with their licenses. They're just more likely to be prosecuted and taken to jail and stopped for not paying traffic tickets. So when you put that all together, it means that there are fewer African-Americans. And it's been a great thing because we have white jurors who are raising their hands saying, why aren't there any African-Americans here? When 56% of the people prosecuted for crimes in San Francisco are African-American. Now you might think, well, that's their fault because they're being arrested for more crimes. But again, if you look at categories of crime, for example, drug offenses, you will see that every study that's done by the National Health Organization show that white drug users, sellers are about the same as black, in terms of percentages. Yet African Americans are 7 times more likely to be, arrested, charged, and convicted of drug offenses. If you look at who is overdosing in San Francisco, on drugs. 60% are white, if you look at the statistics. Yet 70% of people, again, prosecuted with drug offenses are African Americans. So you have to question that and say, well, why is that? You know, in some places around the country, possession of marijuana, even a small amount, is a felony. In Arizona, it's a felony, you know, so you will go to prison for possession of marijuana. In Florida, if you have more than 20 ounces, which is less than, 20 grams, which is less than an ounce, you know, you'll face felony prosecution. And again, overwhelmingly, you see that there are Latinos and African Americans who are charged with those kinds of crimes. I know that's bad news. I don't want to get in on a bad note.
Can I ask you a question about the reasoning for the choice of African Americans? And it's just a question, so I'm trying to figure that. So, you use the media to promote something that you've been working on to be able to, you know, bring some enlightenment to that situation that people didn't realise about. So if you look at the music industry, and then you look at Snoop Dogg, you look at Lil Wayne, who talks about being a pimp, selling women, and you look, which is such, it's cool to do that. You've got people like Chris Brown, who beats his girlfriend up, has got a grill, and without using expletives, who's an amazing singer, but one of his main songs is I'm effing and grilling, and I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So, okay, and we could talk about the rock stars and stuff like that. So this is just a question. I'm mixed race. I wonder, we don't see the super smart, intelligent, also African American stuff like that. Because this access of media, have these people sold an image? Has this increased the reason why people are believing that that's the image of African Americans? Well, it isn't. It's just a small group who are also protesting Black Lives Matter, but they're showing videos of themselves selling drugs on the street, how cool it was. And if you watch the movie from Straight Outta Compton, they talk about how they were treated, but some of those people inside that group were drug dealers and did have guns and did have all of that stuff. So it's not that one hand fits the crime, but there's also, does that increase what people are believing who live in a white community, have never been in the black community and seen how hard that they work in hospitals, they're doctors, they're all, so Obama's probably the first one that they, you know, some people have seen as something great. Has that increased the reason why they have that reputation here in the US? As an English person, we don't see that, but as I've come here, that's what I've seen constantly promoted in the media more than anything.
I've been doing this for 30 years. That's probably one of the most fascinating questions I've ever been asked. I mean it with all honesty. I mean, just because you're a rap star or a rock star, you know, doesn't mean that you're going to be a good role model, you know, for yourself, your profession, or for your race. And I think we've seen that. And, you know, some might argue that black artists are subject to even greater scrutiny than their white counterparts because of racism. But I think when you're at that level, you know, you're subject to a whole different level of scrutiny that none of us really understand. You know, do they have contradictions in their life? You know, do they, you know, sometimes say one thing and mean another? I mean, you can look at, you know, Kanye West and you'll see that every day. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, we do have a First Amendment right to say whatever you want in this country, and that's part of our Constitution as well. We just had a case last week. It was written up in the newspaper day before yesterday, but it happened last week, where this client of ours was accused of these racist rants against the police chief, who's African American. He's the acting police chief. And he was basically praying to God that God would send, you know, angels to kill him. He was posting this on social media, so they arrested him and charged him with the crime. In our office, you're randomly assigned an attorney. So he was assigned an African American attorney, just by chance. And so he was going nuts. I mean, he was like, here he is, an African American attorney charged with making, you know, racial statements. That attorney got up there and got that case dismissed, using a case where a white racist had threatened President Obama as a case precedent. But again, because he prayed to God and not directly, like for him to go out and kill the police chief, that was his saving grace. And the reason I bring that up is that that's the First Amendment. And so people could rap and sing about whatever they want to. There's a a number of cases where rappers are being prosecuted in criminal cases, sometimes for gang allegations because things that they have rapped about. And there's a group of defense attorneys who specialize in representing those artists, arguing that just because you rap about it doesn't mean that you intend to do it. People sing and write and espouse all kinds of things that never actually happen. I think that the story of NWA, is I really enjoyed the movie. Sure, was it hype? Yeah, sure. Was it this romanticized version of Ice Cube and Eazy-E and yeah, I mean, sure, it was that. I mean, they actually wrote and produced it. Is that any different than some of the other stuff that we see that's produced that's completely idealized, taken out of context, and sensationalized? And I'm not justifying it, but it's that you're not going to find truth in that. I mean, the reality is that if you are an African American, man, woman, child in America, and you see what happened to Tamir Rice, or you see what happened to Eric Gardner, is that going to hit at home, for you? Yeah, I would hope so. If you're white and you see that, is that going to hit home for you? I would hope so. Maybe not in the same way. Maybe you contextualize it differently. I'm not saying you. I'm saying anyone who watches that. You'll ask different questions. That's one of the big things that we deal with in our cases. Like in this case that I'm dealing with, a lot of people would say, why did your client resist the police? When they took him down to the ground or told him to get down, why didn't he just do it? Had he done that, we wouldn't even be here. And most people who think that way are going to vote guilty, and they're going to say, hey, you should have complied. I would have complied. But my client has had bad dealings with the police. He's been jacked up before. He's been lied to before and lied about by the police. So his way of approaching it is very different. And not to say that his view of the police is objectively reasonable. His view of the police is his view of the police. And so when you hear him talking about why he did what he did, viewing it through our lens, it might seem completely unreasonable, right? Because we're looking at it like saying, no, I mean, I would not have done that. I would have been so terrified by the guns, I would have got down on the ground. What are you talking about? You could have been shot, or you could have ended up like Oscar Grant. But he's thinking, I am going to be Oscar Grant, right? When the cops confront him with the gun, we're not thinking that he's going to shoot. They're going to shoot us, But he's got a really different perspective. But I think I only answered like that much of your question, but I'd love to talk to you more about it.
Well, it's not that I was trying to say that I agree with that way of treating black people. So it's just that within the music industry, of myself working with musicians, there's so many beautiful, wonderful, talented people within the black African community. Unfortunately, they have access to media, using media. I just wonder sometimes when I was asked the question, because somebody thinks because somebody's Muslim and then blows up the building that all Muslims are all evil. And it's like, has this promoted? Have these guys got some responsibility to say, it's not okay that the police do that, all the ones who do it, it's not all police are bad. And you're working in that industry, it's like, do you see that some people are tainted because they think that way? Well, I see the rap people, but that's not what all black people are like. And those rappers are not even like it. So my last question to you is, which is, I want to ask you, how do you personally sleep at night with all this? And when you see a situation, because like some of us, we might get angry when we see that's injustice. How do you stay calm? Do you do Tai Chi? Do you do yoga? To not get like too emotionally involved in all this, because I think I would be in an insane asylum if I did your job. I wanted to say.
Don't get me wrong. I do party like it's 1999 sometimes. So, I do enjoy that. But I think you take it one challenge at a time. I mean, like when you're, composing. I know are you a producer?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, when you're producing a project, you just do it one at a time, and you just try to make that one track, blow it out. And I think that's what we try to do too, because you can only take one case at a time. And if you don't do a good job on that one case, you're not going to be able to keep up the integrity of your music or your work. And so I think that's how we keep it all together. I mean, You know, arguably, it's fashionable now to do political. Look at Beyonce, right? I mean, people were saying that she was commercializing on, you know, what's happening, but I would like to think that, you know, her and John Legend and Alicia Keys and, you know, other people who are doing socially conscious work through their music are doing it for a righteous reason. And, you know, maybe that they feel an obligation, or they feel that they're part of that, you know, the history that they need to be a part of. And, you know, that's why I think music is such a unifying factor, because, you know, white artists, you know, Latino artists, Native American artists, you know, are also expressing themselves, you know, through their music. And I really think that that's the answer to getting people together, is through culture. Is that if we create strong ties, like Tina's your daughter?
Tatum.
Oh, Tatum. You know, I mean, you know, for her world, it'll be very different, you know, than ours. I mean, because she's going to grow up, you know, hopefully with more diversity, with, you know, the diversity of music and friends, and that's something that, you know, we have to create the culture where that is possible. You know, where you're exchanging ideas and information with people who don't look like you. But at the same time, it does come from us, right? There's a study that was done by, it was reported in Time magazine, that babies become racist at 8 months old. And they found that it was because of two things. One, that's when the babies begin associating with other babies. And so they begin making connections as to, you know, sort of priorities and you know, figuring out who's on the totem pole. And they also start making associations because of who their parents hang out with. And so if they only see their parents hanging out with a certain kind of people, or they don't see their parents with any black friends, they make that association, and they do the same thing.
Wow, wow.